and welcome back to another Changemaker chat, where we talk about the highs and lows of what it means to be someone who wants to change the world.
And one of those things that we feel like we definitely can all relate to, just like we talked about imposter syndrome last time we got together, here's another concept called analysis paralysis. And I'm sure that any of you listening have heard this, felt this, experienced this. As we kind of prep for these meetings, we look for definitions and kind of see what other people are saying about the topics that we're covering. So the definition of analysis paralysis is the inability to make a decision due to overthinking. Oftentimes it's when we are trying to do the prudent work of balancing the upside and the downside. But sometimes we have way too much to process, so we end up doing absolutely nothing about it. We have all these things on our plate and we do nothing.
You know, what's interesting about that is I was looking it up, and in one of the studies that I found, there's only a limited capacity that our brains are able to use. When we overthink things and we put so much information in our brains, we're actually taking up space. Like there's a limited amount of space, and we're taking that up with anxiety and with overthinking and with self-doubt. And in turn, we literally have less brain capacity to actually do the thing that we're overthinking that we should do.
Oh man.
Isn't that interesting?
That is really interesting. And that's so true. And just thinking about all of the, honestly, like the potential you keep from the world by letting yourself sit in this stewing in this overthinking. You're limiting your brain to be its best self, be creative, be curious, be just whimsical. So that's really interesting. One thing I also found too was kind of when I was thinking about like this balancing this upside downside, I am sure we all have made a pros and cons list. Can you guess who has been attributed to doing the first pro con list?
You.
No, but I have perfected it. So actually it was Benjamin Franklin. Found some in his journals, actually like some proof of kind of doing this like pro and con balance. But what I think is really interesting with the pro con list that I think is actually something that's very wise in creating one of these lists. So not all of the items on the pro con list are equal. Like that one thing on that pro list might outweigh all 15 on the other side. So I just think that's really good wisdom in decision making, where we can't just look at all the pros and cons, make them balance each other out, cross each other out. It's really focusing on what you value the most too in making these decisions.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest question that I have is, why do we make it so complicated to make a change? And one of the other things I found said, we relentlessly exaggerate the cost of being wrong.
Ooh.
Let that sink in for just a second. We relentlessly exaggerate the cost of being wrong. If we're wrong, so be it. Is it that big of a deal? Like, does it hold that much weight? So we just make it complicated. We make it really heavy. Yes, there are some heavy decisions to be made.
I actually, though, when you were saying that, I kind of even felt like a little bit of a weight lifted off my heart. Like it is okay. Just that permission to get a little messy, make some mistakes. The only time you're actually doing the wrong thing is when you're doing nothing.
Amen.
And so I know that I have definitely experienced analysis paralysis when I do have way too much information in hand. And I do want to stress, I think evidence is a beautiful thing. I think when we know better, we can do better. So I absolutely like, this doesn't mean throw all things to the wind and just wing everything.
Yeah.
But I do think some of the beauty and just some of the surprises in life is when we do kind of let ourselves wing it. And I think because we have access to so much information, we feel like we have to measure all things all the time. And yes, there are going to be decisions where you're going to have to sit down and really think through some things, but I think some things are just going to be better as long as you just take the step, like your first step forward.
Yeah. This last week at church, my pastor said, prayer is wonderful. A lot of times we use prayer as an excuse to stop and to
Mhm.
not do anything. And
Yeah.
so his philosophy that he gave us was pray, guess, and go. And that has basically been my philosophy this week.
Mm.
Pray, guess, and go.
I guess you
Get
go.
the information you need, take a guess, and go. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, go back to square one and you realize what
Mhm.
not to do for the next time.
Yeah, take that lesson learned and take a stronger step into the next path. Yeah, I think that's so good.
The main things that in my head causes us to go through this analysis paralysis is fear. We're fearful of being wrong. Like I said, the cost of being wrong, we exaggerate it. I think we're fearful to make any decision. And so if you're anything like me, you have 17 Google tabs open. What I do is I stop, I sit, I exit out all of them because I can go back through history and see like,
Yeah.
which one I actually need. And I just start fresh. Okay, this is too much. This is one, either all the same information or it's all different and I don't need that. So what are the things that you do, Taylor, to help yourself overcome this fear, this analysis paralysis?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, this is actually something that I've had to force myself to do, is actually let myself rest for a minute.
Mhm.
I think I am somebody who likes to go, 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 but sometimes what I find I'm doing are empty tasks. I'm moving forward, or I'm moving, but I'm not moving forward. And so I have actually tried to give myself permission to take a deep breath, sit. I do fully believe in brain breaks because we do have so much going on. So first I let myself rest. But I think it's also fair to validate when you do like validate yourself. This is a big decision. This is a hard decision. And it's okay to say, I don't know what to do here. But I think we can really center ourselves on our values, what matters the most to us. And I think that's going to also kind of throwing back to the beginning of our conversation, focusing on, those pros and con items have different weights. And so I think being able to recognize what truly does matter. And I think the biggest thing is knowing that the path you choose is what you make it. It's not defined by what all of those bullet point items were on the list. I think that both have their pros and cons, and you can make yourself happy or miserable in both of those paths. So I think really just once you're on the journey is making the most of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. There are so many times in my life that I can think back and it honestly really didn't matter which one I choose. I think college is a great one. It really didn't matter which one I picked. Both of them would have been great. I would have made friends at both of them. I would probably not be sitting here if I didn't pick the one I chose, but I'd be on a different path and so be it. And that would be great. I think the biggest thing is sleep on it. I love that quote, just sleep on it. And like Nike says, just do it. Just go and do it. Do something, do anything. Go with your gut. My mom always says, go with your gut. So you know where you're being tugged a little bit. Just go, just try it. Just make any decision. Don't sit in this paralyzed state of, I can't do anything. You can because you are powerful and you are wonderful and you are human and you have a choice to make. But sitting in the paralysis, that's not a choice that you should choose.
Yeah,
But by
being paralyzed is a choice you make. And if we're going to stay there, and I think too, our audience is made up of change makers. And so your action matters. And there is somebody on the other side of this work that needs you to move. The calling that you have been given is so urgent and important in your corner of the world.
I talk to so many people that, they're sitting in this place of fear where they don't want to start something or they don't want to do something because they're afraid of what the world's going to say when they do it or say it. And they're just analyzing this over and over of, well, what if, what if this doesn't work? Well, what if it does? What if what you have to say or what you have to do or the impact that you want to make, what if somebody really needs that right now? And what if they're just waiting for you to say that or do that? You've no idea what hangs in the balance of you making a choice to step forward in faith and step forward into your calling. I think one of the things that I like to do is to structure my day with the decisions that matter the most at the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
Another phrase is swallow the frog. Is that the phrase?
I
Maybe
have no
that's not the
idea.
phrase. I can't imagine that's actually a phrase. What is that phrase where you like do the hard thing first?
Oh, no, you're right. If you know
Do
you have to
swallow the frog.
swallow it first thing in the morning. Maybe something that's a little bit more that might resonate with more people who aren't out there eating frogs for breakfast is I believe it was the lazy genius Kendra Adachi, and she said, do what matters most to you in the morning or at the beginning of your day, so you're not spending the rest of your day chasing that thing. So that's actually too where I make my decisions. That's where I do more reflection. That's where I do more of my creative writing, my work. As wild as that phrase was, I think that totally makes sense. And again, some people are night owls, so I think picking your time of day where you are the most creative, you're the most yourself, you're the most expressive, that's when you make these kinds of decisions.
Yeah, I agree. I think another thing that I like to do is to set a deadline. Like I need to make a decision by this date. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is like a hard deadline set by someone else, but you set it. You set the deadline and you keep yourself accountable for it.
Yeah.
Tell somebody.
Yeah.
That's, I think, another thing. Tell somebody that you're having a hard time making a decision, and not that you're necessarily seeking their advice, but then ideally they'll ask you, hey, have you made a decision?
And I think too, one thing you're going to always see in our advice to people is to engage other people. Your calling, your life is better with company. And so, yeah, we're going to always encourage you to find a mentor, find a friend, to really overcome all of the things. And I bet you, Changemaker, who's listening, you have some really fantastic support that you can be pouring into others as well. Well, guys, thank you so much for being with us here today and sipping on some coffee with us. We are going to highlight a hero of change here in a couple weeks. We're really excited to introduce you to her. And if there is any other topic that you want to hear about, you want to chat about over a cup of coffee, please let us know.
Well, cheers, Taylor.
See you soon.